Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Nishu. She has set up the stage, for micro front end. और मेरा भी talk micro front end पे. Right. So first thing, how many of you guys are using really micro front end, microservices, micro front end? Sorry, मेरा machine पूरा developer machine है, so it's like all garbage. You can see that Counter Strike still playing. एक minute. हाँ बस हो गया बेटा. ठीक है. Right, so how many people are using really microservices and getting benefit of microservices? Anyone here? कौन है भाई पीछे? Yes. So you are doing MFE? Mic? Do you have mic? उनको देना mic. Tell me what you are doing, guys, in MFE. पीछे पास करो mic. Yes. Oh gosh.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
So we use Microfrontend. We use package called Webpack Module Federation, developed by Manfred.
Good. Maybe we use. I'm going to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Chalo. And how successful this module federation is? Very good. Quite successful and simple. मैं एकदम आपके साथ हूँ. Okay, good. I'm so excited कि one of our friend is using MFE and actually you are using module federation, right? Now, if you look at Nishu ma'am, she talked about using single page application. Okay. Now, this single page application is awesome. It's a framework, right? It does everything through the CLI. But believe me, it is little bit complicated. I saw some people raising hand for single page application also. So guys, how much successful you are? Just as a talk. यहाँ पे आगे किसी ने हाथ रेज किया था स्पा के लिए. Single page application, how much does it work for micro front end? अब वो हाथ ही ऊपर नहीं किया, So I know there are a lot of issues with that, So first thing, already ma'am, okay. So I'm going to talk about module federation, how to use module federation plugin. It is not a framework. It is a very simple plugin. You add that plugin and your application becomes 2 projects. You can have multiple projects. They can start speaking with each other, right? Now very quickly, definitely like as ma'am said, that this micro front end is actually a byproduct of microservices, frankly. You can call it as just microservice UI. I know that people invent and reinvent the synonyms, they sell the synonyms, but I feel that this micro front end won't exist if there is no microservice. That's at least my feeling. And very quickly, I'll just talk about microservice, then quickly I will go into the federation thing. So, sorry for the bad diagram. So basically what happens in microservices, you have a domain. For example, you have an ERP domain, or you have a hospital domain, or you have a travel domain, right? What do? You divide your domain into subdomains, right? Remember, one of the things which Nishu ma'am said, I can understand, left menu, controls, but what I feel, user controls cannot be microservices. I think I'm very clear on this. Means, if one person is working on an autocomplete box, दूसरा बोलता है मैं grid में काम कर रहा हूँ, microservice है, I think no, right? What I feel, when you say you have a domain, you have to divide that domain into proper bounded context. For example, if you say ERP, then you say that, okay, there is one billing project, one there is an accounting project, one there is an inventory project. Are you getting me, guys? You cannot have like एक user control बना रहा है, दूसरा वो बना है, चलो भाई microservices है हम, right? That's, I think you can say those are user controls, right? Now, so separate databases, separate API, separate user interfaces, right? And that UI part is what people term as micro front end, right? Now that UI part, one person is developing in React, one person is developing in Angular. अभी मैं बोल रहा हूँ, but ऐसा होता नहीं है. I'll tell you why later on, right? Angular होता है, but I am on the stage. So that UI part, what you see out there, is where 2 developers will sit independently. They will code, they will check in. In other words, what we are talking about, the biggest benefit out here is this parallel development, So a person, a developer who is sitting in inventory does not have to sit in the meetings of billing. You know, it happens right in Zoom meeting में mute करके बैठा है, मेरा module नहीं है, बैठा हूँ, क्या करेगा यार, you know. So, you know, he's just sitting, right? So, so what you do here is that if a person who is working on inventory, he just works on inventory, his databases, his API, his UI, right? Yes, there is an interaction. Wherever you have message exchanges, you will have MSMQ, you will have, you know, whatever. So basically the first image. So you will have queues, you will have web API, you will have files, whatever mechanism you want to use for communicating between those systems, right? Now, this is one important part, you know, actually this slide I included. Microservices, again I repeat, cannot be left menu and a footer. It can be, but then the domain is different must be, right? It cannot be an autocomplete box and another developer working on a grid. It should be, how do you say it? It should have a context. It should have a user context. You know, means if an end user is sitting, right, a kind of a bounded context. The end user is sitting, end user is saying like, okay, this is an ERP system, I will only do billing. I understand there is an accounting department, but I don't worry about it. So must be, that can be one isolated UI, one isolated API, one isolated database, right? So this word bounded context, you know, where we say that, what is the context of the user? A person who is doing accounting, he's only worried with debit, credit, journals, vouchers, balance sheets. Are you getting me, guy? Yes. So if that kind of bifurcation, if your team is clear, now remember, this is not a technical thing, this is more of a management stuff, or I'll say rather, how you identify your domain and you split them into pieces. If that goes wrong, the whole microservices goes wrong, period. Then it is better that you work with monolith application, right? Okay, so that's one important part out here. This all words come from domain-driven development. If somebody has done here, you will understand the word bounded context, right? Okay. Now we understand that. We understand we have to have clear domains. We have to have subdomains. We have to have a clear bounded context, right? But, you know, these bounded contexts, you know, these projects have to work together to run that domain. For the inventory, the payroll, the accounting system, they have to work together to make a ERP system, right? So here we are now talking about this vocabulary federation, right? So there are different entities, but they are trying to collaborate to create a single goal. Okay, so you have an inventory, you have a billing, the billing makes an entry, the billing sends an entry to accounting, accounting makes an entry into the debit credit, right? So federation, and that's what this plugin does. This plugin, you know, that the module federation plugin divides your project into different pieces, different physical entities altogether, different Angular project, every Angular project having its own Angular JSON file, package.json file, its own TS config and so on, okay? Now, one of the things which can come to your mind is, which came to my mind, that how about basically, what if I just do, means in other words, I should do ng new accounting project. I'm just talking about in general, people who are new to microservices. I do ng new billing, ng new accounting, separate things, and it is done. But see, there are other issues with it. For example, how do you handle routing? How do you handle sharing of data, right? How do you handle common code? So these are, you know, some of the challenges which comes, you know, when you talk about creating separate projects and integrating between them, okay? If you look at our typical Angular project, what we have, okay, so just coming out here, if I want to create separate projects, that means I have to have separate build. Means I should be able to do ng build accounting, ng build billing, ng build inventory, ng build payroll, right? Means that I need to control my build. And what is that thing which builds into Angular? What is the system which does the build of Angular? So now we are getting into complication. Very good, right? Okay, so this project what we have out here, the normal Angular project, there we don't have the Webpack file outside, okay? So that means that we have to somehow take out the Webpack file, we have to say that, you know, this project will run on 4200 port, this project will run on 5000 port, and this and that, right? So rather than doing it manually, you can use this single spa, and my favorite is this module federation. This module federation, what you see out here, it is not a framework, right? It is just a plugin. So what you do is, very quickly, you, I'll not go into the, what you call, so what you do out here is, you go to your Angular project, you say that ng add this module federation, right? And after that, so let us say now you want to go and say you want to create, how do you say, an accounting application. So what you will do is you will say here, one is you have to create a host. Remember I talked about federation. So you have to have some kind of a top host. Okay, so first thing what you do out here, you go out here and you create, ng new, and you create, let us say, ERP application, right? After that, you can start adding projects to it. After that, you can say, okay, ng application inventory, ng application accounting, ng application this, right? And what it ends up is, it ends up something like this. So very quickly, remember it's a damn simple plugin. If you look at what Nishu ma'am showed, right, that is definitely a good framework, but it is very sophisticated. Here it is a simple plugin which will actually go and change the structure, eject out the web config file, web config files. It will change the ports, separate Angular JSON files, do everything for you, right? So here it is. I am using Webstorm for last 1 year. This has been my favorite IDE. How many of you guys are using Webstorm here? Areva, good, right? So here it is. I am around. If anybody comes down and tells me that what is that one or two things in Webstorm which is better than VS Code? VS Code is awesome. कोई उधर देखा है VS Code को बेच नहीं, he's selling Webstorm. No. So but I know that in Webstorm there are some refactoring tools which I've been using for last 1 year. So if anybody comes and tells me that, okay, in Webstorm, this thing I liked it. Okay, this is one of the things which I don't have in VS Code. Here is a 1 year license. I will give it to you. Okay. So Google मत करना, अगर पता है तो बता देना. Okay. बाद में. Okay, so here it is. Can everyone see this? I'm not sure. दिख रहा है कि नहीं? Everyone can see this code, at least that left menu. Yes. Can you raise your hand? Left menu दिख रहा है? Yes. Okay, chalo. See now what happened is, once I did that ng add out there. Okay, so once I did this ng application accounting and ng application billing, right? What it did is, first thing it took out that web config file. So you can see here this web config file out is here, right? Webpack file. And that webpack file, what he has done is, there you can see, if you see, like for example, first thing is, he takes care of a lot of things. For example, between two projects, you have shared components. You can have a utility components. You can have components, which are like Angular core, Angular common, and Angular forms, and so on. So those components, you can see that he has created a nice, a tag out there. So once you do a build, he will see that these shared components are placed at one place, right? So if you look at all that Webpack config file out here, so every project, for example, this is the accounting, this is the billing, everyone has that shared module, right? So once you do ng build accounting, it will create a separate build. Once you do ng build inventory, it does a separate build, right? So that's how this exports out here works, right? Now, very quickly, so right, any questions still here? Yes, I know that in the session nobody asked you that any questions. I am asking you. Very simple. This is, if you want a detailed document, I have the detailed document with me. I will not go into now creating a project, etc. In this 5 o'clock, it's not possible. Yes, go ahead. Mike, wahan pe, yes, please, Mike. Yeah, tell me, I can hear you. Go ahead. I'll repeat your question. Bol.
Whole Angular support or the framework along with it?
No, it will not. The common modules, right? It will not load again. And second, if let's say one Angular application is doing lazy loading, he will load only his lazy loaded feature. You can actually tell him that in accounting, just load vouchers, it will load only vouchers.
So for example, another Angular application is suppose using Angular material, right? So again, a different version. Is it gonna? Like,
Oh, no, then it's a problem.
so
then
we
it's the
have
issue.
to strictly use that pointed version, right?
Yes.
Only if we are using the same version.
See, you can do it, then you have a common shared module, you'll be asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble, right? Guys, 2 minutes. This is a very good question actually. With all respect, this microservices, this micro front end, whatever has come here, one thing, which I want to point out. So I have been working with, we have like 4 or 5 micro front end projects which I'm working on, right? And basically, these are some of the points which I've documented. Point number 1, as Nishu ma'am also said, if you think that you are good with monolith application, just keep it, right? Until you want parallel development, increase productivity, and your team should be very well planned, your domain should be crisp and clear, there should not be question about boundary context, right? If that is clear, it is good. Or else, if you are happy with monolith application, you should be happy, period, right? Second one, as we said that either it is single SPA or either the module federation, it starts ejecting out the webpack config file. Now you are calling for trouble as well. Trouble means you have to handle it, I'm saying. It's not trouble. You have to then Google, Stack Overflow, sab aa jayega usme, right? So that webpack, you should know webpack very nicely. Very nicely you should know webpack. That is the second thing. Third thing, which I found in my projects is, I cannot do that simple JWT token. Because now you have different applications, right? The JWT token goes through the cookie, most of the time through the cookie, right? Now I have to start, my architecture complexity starts increasing because we are talking about single sign-on and all stuff, right? Real micro front end, right? That fantasy of real micro front end where we say one application is going to be Angular and one application is going to be Vue.js and one application is going to be React. It is single SPA. It is, what is this? We have federations. I'm sorry, none of them support at this moment. Why? Think about it. Let's say from Angular, you want to go and load a React application. Now in React, what happens? There are thousands ways of doing routing. There is React router and whatnot and whatnot. So again, that is a far dream. So you can have very safely by using module federation, you can have 2 applications. But if you're talking about loading a React application and a Vue application, you have to have a POC at place. You have to have the full R&D at place, right? So that is again like one more thing. The next important part is your server-side architecture. This is again a very important part. Your server-side architecture, when it comes to transaction, you should follow the Saga pattern. Means, for instance, what I'm saying, let us say that I make a billing entry, right? After that billing entry I make, it sends to the accounting saying, okay, there is a new bill added. Later on, the user goes and deletes it. And later on, he goes and adds a new in the same bill again, assume, he rebuilds it, right? Now that should all go in a very saga manner. How do you say a story, right? One after another. It should go in a same propagated way from the server side, okay? So it means what I'm saying, your server side architecture then starts also getting complicated with CQRS and repository and so on, right? And I do understand that when people talk about micro front end, they talk about using iframes and local storage. I would say that if you want to be safe enough, if you want to follow that ACID principles, first go and save it on the database and from the database take that data. Don't get into like, the bill has been added, it's not been added for some reason, you have sent it to a frame or you have sent it to a local storage, accounting mein chala gaya. So you have to now truly look into that ACID principle as well. What I'm saying, it starts multiplying, right? It's easy actually, once you have a POC at place, it is easy. I'm just saying that a proper strong POC should be at place, right? These are some of the things. Definitely common code, common API, common data sharing. These are some of the, again, things, which as a team you have to decide, right? So just adding to your question, what you said, the problems, these are some of the things, which I felt, my team felt, that in a proper micro front end, we had these issues, right? So definitely it is a start. Microservices is coming up, right? But I feel that from whatever frameworks we have, right? Just to give you an overview, these are the 3 frameworks we have looked into very detailed. In my company, we have looked into very detail of these 3 frameworks. Last one, just leave it Pyral. I don't know why people are marketing it. It is of no use, at least for Angular, right? For React, it is. In the first 2, Spa is one, but the second one I prefer Federation because it is a simple plugin. It is not a framework. I get a Webpack config file. I have control over my code, right? So that's a very small talk from my side. I will not go too much into it, but I know that you want to ask more details, right? Saying that, sir, how did you do that NG ad? How did you create that project, right? So I have 2 people out here, and they have been helping me around for past 2 years into microservices. One is an expert on Spa. When I say expert on Spa, means unhe 6-7 project jala diye Spa mein, right? So that is Nagesh sir. Where is Nagesh sir? Please raise your hand. Upar khada ho jao, sir. I know that because of the time constraint, I'm not able to show you the demo. If you're talking about Spa, unse baat karo. The second one, module federation, right, is Menka. Menka, can you raise your hand? Thora upar, yeah. She has worked with 5-6 federation project, module federation projects. Just ask her, right? So what I've given here is what I felt is I'm comfortable to do with Microfrontend, by using module federations, right? So any questions here? What is the time? How much time is left? Some khatam ho gaya time? Yeah.
So how are we maintaining the separate code bases? Like I want to have billing, now that it is a completely different project, its source repo should be different. No?
See, like so monorepo, you will actually, Pankaj will be talking on that, how to handle multiple repositories, check-in, check-out. I think Pankaj, that's the talk next after this. Okay. So definitely you have to have monorepo at place. It multiplies, guys. जैसे आप parallel बोलते हो ना, तो फिर multiply होने वाला है, right? That's there. So
right.
There is a monorepo concept. Okay. Yes.
Sir, how do we manage the NGRX state part? Since you showed that there will be a host application and there will be many shell applications. So how we are going to, because it might be a possibility that in enterprise projects we do have, global state and then component store, and we derive the data. So how do we manage that?
Yeah, the NGRX state part, you have to get into some common browser like, service, worker service, or you have to get into something local storage. Little bit it becomes difficult, the NGRX part, yes. So what we do actually for state management, every application has its own state, right? You have to think it, that's again like the same thing, bounded context. If you're thinking accounting, right, his state will be his, right? How can his state become the state of other? So I think over there also, I understand you're going to transition from one system to another, but that part, should be thought as a separate state. And if there is any state to be maintained, we go on the server side and get the state. If across it one, we have a common API and we do through that, because the shared ones, what is happening with the shared ones? You are having different URLs, different ports. His session storage is not going to be accessed here. His cookie is not going to be accessed here because the URLs are separate. So we just take it from the shared API or from the shared data. But again, that state also has to be thought isolated. Yes, sir.
How do you handle authentication in different Microfrontend shell applications?
Communication between, yes. Mera marketing yes. Communication, yes.
Not communication, authentication.
Authentication, single sign-on. If you look at, very good question, I think in that points I have put that single sign-on, because now you are dealing with multiple standalone website. So it has to be single sign-on. Since you sign in one of the microfrontend or microservices, you get signed into everyone. And mostly in microservices, they have a login application as a separate, or a security as a separate. They should not create security as a separate domain, but security as a, how do you say, a shared domain. See, remember, when you divide your project into domain, one is you have a main domain, like you will say in ERP, we want to do accounting well. So accounting is your main domain. Then you can have subset like inventory and payroll, and then your common domain, technical domain like caching, security. So you have to divide your projects into domain and context. Yes. So I know, guys, it's 5 o'clock. I don't want to really stretch this session. I am around. Nagesh sir is there. Ma'am is there. Menka ma'am is here. So guys, here it is. My booth is out there. Quest Pond, right? And just to advertise myself, right? So for for past 20 years, right, what I do is I help out job developers to get to that next level. So for example, if you're a senior software engineer, how do you become a team lead? आप अपना पैसा दुगना कैसे कर सकते हो, right? So jump कैसे कर सकते हो आप, right? So right? So basically, that's what I've been doing for past 20 years. We started from audio cassette T series. I remember with Gulshan sir is not there, but T series में हम लोग recording करते थे. There we went into Manish sir. Manish sir is not here. BPP publication. Then we went into YouTube, and spamming चले जा रहा है 20 साल से, right? So definitely, that's if you want to get. So we have a free access of thousands of interview question courses. आप बोलो PHP, Java, .NET, Angular, and more technical base. So there is my booth out there. Go ahead, share it, and get this course for free. Remember, just one line I want to end. Working in a company and preparing for jobs, दोनों अलग है. I can tell you, if I ask someone here, सब job देख रहे हैं, I'm sure. If I ask you someone here, what is content projection? आप सबको पता है. You are all working, सारा दिन you are mailing, you are having politics. But one of the things what you are not doing is not revising yourself. So don't be ashamed. Revise करना है, अच्छी नौकरी लेनी है, और stable job होनी है. Family should be happy, right? So guys, thank you very much. There is my booth. Happy learning, happy job hunting. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv sir.